Stop. And you can start now.
Yeah, can you ping me at 15 minutes? I think that would be helpful.
Yo, hey, I'm Agda, and I will be presenting this work that I recently finished, which actually is coming out in archive tomorrow, which is like large language model debate. And like, feel free to interrupt me like during this talk. I haven't really given it before, so any feedback is probably good. Or like, if there's anything that's unclear, it'd be really good to hear it now, as opposed to like in like free talks time or whatever, right? Cool. So I'll just jump straight in. Also, like this graphic like took me way too long to make. And like I think it's really telling of like the limitations of like DALL-E at the moment, because like the debater on the right has like 3 legs. I don't know if anyone's noticed it. Like it's very hard to give it like minor corrections as well. Anyway, so this is work with my beautiful collaborators. It was really fun working with all of them. The monkey didn't get a citation, but except from that, everybody else did. It's a combination of people that were on Seri Maths, UCL, and Anthropic. And it was just really fun work with all of them. I'm sure many of you know these people. They're in Constellation. Cool. Okay, so here are like facts that are cool to me that like motivated me to do debate, and like I think they're probably useful for safety work in general. The first is it's easier to spot good solutions than it is to generate solutions. This is like how best event works, and it just seems to be like a nice fact of many domains. It might not be true of all domains, but it's something you can exploit in like many domains that we have. Better than that though, it's easier to spot good critiques than it is to generate critiques, which is just like some criticism or some feedback on something, or like some edit on how it could be improved. We can even go a step further, which is we can just go, it's easier to spot good critiques of critiques than it is to generate the critiques of the critiques in the first place. And like maybe you can recurse into this indefinitely, which seems to be a very useful property to have. The second thing is, it's really easy to use copies of the same model. Like this is one thing that you can totally get in like when we're doing alignment work, which you don't normally get like when you're trying to align humans. This is a nice effect, which is it means it's quite easy to control for skill and knowledge in games or in certain settings. And in particular, it means that it's easy to have adversarially fair games, which is something like which is kind of lacking maybe in the real world. So in particular, many times when I show people debate, they're like, oh, but debate sucks in the real world. And I'm like, yeah, but it's really hard for me to control that debaters are going to have the same skills. It's much easier to do this in like debate, or with LLMs at least. So I think those 2 facts are cool, and they're like the reasons that I was like motivated and excited about debate in the first place. This is like a slide where it's just like, oh look, we're getting really good at beating benchmarks, and in particular, the 0 line is human level performance, and we're getting like superhuman performance a lot. So this should motivate you. I mean, I don't really sell this to people in Constellation, which is like, you're gonna have like superhuman models soon. Cool. So we're like in picture 1, and this is like picture 2. Totally stole this from the OpenAI folk. I hope they're okay with that. The question is like, how do you really operationalize like this picture? Because we don't have like models that are smarter than humans yet. And like, yeah, how do we even get some information about this? The setting that I use is like set up by Julian and David, who are also in the room. So if you have any criticisms, ask them. Where what we will do, instead of having like the really big superhuman model, is we're going to simulate this at the moment by going, well, we can give models some information that we hold out from other models. So we can create an expert, non-expert gap. In our situation, we're gonna like have some text that an expert has access to, but the non-expert doesn't have access to. This is kind of hard when you train on like the entire corpus of the internet now, but thankfully there's still some like withheld out data sets that we can use. Does that make sense to everyone? Cool. To just clarify what I mean by operationalizing this, what we're going to have is we're going to have non-experts answer questions from comprehension texts, but they cannot access the comprehension text. What they may do is they may query the unreliable expert, and expert is someone that has access to the text, but might have some other issues, or like we're not clear what their incentives are. What we care about, or the score on the board to like improve with our different protocols, is non-expert accuracy, which is like how well can you answer the question even though you don't have access to the text. And then what we finally say is we're going to use a quality data set, which has like 8K token length stories, which also provides like candidate answers. So there's like a top distractor answer and a true answer in these situations. On the right is an example question where it's like some sci-fi story about like mining an asteroid. And in particular, there's one correct answer and there's one incorrect answer for it. Cool? Nice. So here are the protocols that we care about. Obviously, there is debate, where we're going to have 2 LLMs argue, each for one side of the debate, they will simultaneously like talk, which means that they don't get to condition on each other's answer like in the middle of a round. And we're going to do like multiple rounds of this. We'll do 3 rounds of this actually, so that you can generate good arguments, you can generate good critiques, and you can generate good critiques and critiques. And in particular, we also let them quote from the text. They get a finite quote limit, but like this can be used by both models to like try sway the judge, and the judge is going to answer at the end. Cool. There's a variation of this, which is like we could also ask the judge to like talk intermediately and like ask for clarifying questions, or maybe just like highlight where its uncertainties are, and maybe that's going to be useful. And then finally, we have some baselines. And there's like the naive baseline, where you just go like, hey, non-expert, answer the question. We have the expert baseline, where you go, you give the text to the model. And then you have consultancy, which is like this single-sided debate, where you have the non-adversarial component, where you can like, as a non-expert, critique or ask for critiques, but you can't, you have like no other expert that might be helping you in those situations. So it really like tackles like the second point on like the facts that I like at the beginning. Make sense? Also, the consultancy has a prior of 50-50, so we're going to let the consultant argue for the correct answer and the incorrect answer. We're going to take the average answer that the judge takes over those. Cool. All right. We're going to start with language model judges because they're like easy to run with and we can iterate quickly on this. This is actually the prompt that we use. You can read that in your own time. I think it's fairly coherent and it makes sense. It's obvious. We're not really giving them any information. It's like crazy here. It's more for completeness. And then here's some measures. I don't think I'm going to go through these entirely, but I'll just say that these ones at the top are unsupervised, which means that you can get win rates, or you can work out like debater persuasiveness without ground truth labels, which is a nice fact, because you can just look at how much the judge chooses an answer or doesn't choose an answer, independent of if the answer is correct or not. And at the bottom, we're going to have some things that you need ground truth labels for, which is like obviously accuracy and the correct and incorrect ELO, which will be like interesting for analyzing how persuasive you can be if you're given the right answer or the incorrect answer. Sound good to everyone? Cool. Okay, cool. So then results. So these are like scores on the board just for like how does each protocol do with different LLM judges. And it's quite cool, or like a nice result from here is that like debate and interactive debate for like competent judges are really outperformed consultancy. We see this for humans, and we see this for GPT-4 Turbo. 3.5 is quite bad and like not very coherent, but for completeness we included it. And Claude 2.1 is like lacking behind 4. But in general, using debate, and in this situation, the experts of GPT-4 Turbo, these numbers on the names at the bottom are just the judges. You can see that like judges are able to like almost reclaim a lot of expert accuracy by using like debate. Does this make sense?
Sorry, the expert is always GPT-4 Turbo for all 3 of these?
Yeah, so GPT-4 Turbo was the debater in all of these situations, and these are the non-expert judges that you're seeing.
I guess I'm confused as to why the expert accuracy varies from the 3 cases.
Because they each can't read 8,000 tokens to the same level of like fidelity.
Okay.
So like, for example, GPT-4 Turbo, expert, is able to look at the entire text and gets like 92% accuracy. But Claude 2.1 gets like 89% because it just doesn't look at, it doesn't attend to its context window as well.
Oh, so the expert in that case is Claude 2.1, not GPT-4 Turbo?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was
Sorry,
confused with.
so
Okay.
the experts
Okay.
in the debates and in the consultancies are like GPT-4 Turbo.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Cool. Do it?
Yeah, there were just 2 different meanings of expert here.
Yeah.
One is like who's doing the debating, and 2 is like if you hand the judge the whole story, so now it's an expert.
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah.
Expert just means normally has the text.
Okay.
I guess I should have said the debaters and the consultants are GPT-4 Turbo. Cool. All right. I think that's like okay. That's like maybe a data point, but it's decent. But like, why does debate work? And I think this is like the interesting thing for me, which is what we did was we wanted to see why debate was working. We took lots of models. We did like a large cross-play tournament where they just played against each other, which is like breaking the self-play nature of debate, but it was interesting because it meant that we could evaluate how good each debater was compared to a different debater. And we could also then like compare what was happening under optimization. And an interesting fact is you can see that in every situation, your ELO is better if you're arguing for the correct answer than if you're arguing for the incorrect answer. So you're able to do better if you're assigning the correct answer than the incorrect answer. The second thing, which is really interesting on this first graph, is that as you increase your optimization pressure, as in like as you optimize your best event, in particular we do optimization against like a judge, against the judge signal here. So the judge doesn't have access to the story, but they're like being used as the preference model. Then like models disproportionately get better at arguing the correct answer than the incorrect answer, which is like a cool fact. This means that like when you look at the second like graph and we like look at what this ELO difference is, then you can say that as your aggregate ELO increases, which is like how good you do independent of we know what position you're arguing for, then you're actually doing way better arguing the correct answer than the incorrect answer. This means then like if you were to take them in self-play, which is what we actually want to use debate for, then stronger debaters in general have like a bigger ELO diff between positions. They're like relatively better at arguing the correct answer than the incorrect answer, which means that then the judge accuracy goes up. Does that make sense? There's like a lot happening there, but.
On the left-hand side, I guess BON is like best of N, but what is C?
Oh, so this is like Will Saunders is like critique and refinement. So you can like generate critiques and then rank the critique, then give the critique back over a refinement and be like, improve your answer. So critique and refinement is an effect. The fact that critique and refinement doesn't work as well as best of N suggests that like in the domain of like debate at the moment, or at least that like the critiques aren't that important. Or like relative to just like spotting good answers. It's easier to spot good arguments than it is to improve an argument. But I wouldn't put too much faith on that. I think in like domains like code or something, it's going to end up being way more useful.
Can you explain again what best of N is?
Best of N is a technique for improving your model at inference time, where you sample like 8 completions, then you rank the completions and choose the best one. So you like normally change your temperature, so it's like slightly larger, so like you have temperature 1, generate like 8 completions, which are like a bit more noisy, but then you rank them and choose the best one. Does that make sense?
In the context of debate, how is the best one?
So what you do is, that's a good question. So here, green generates like 8 responses. We take a dummy response for red, we put them together, and then we ask the judge like, in which of these situations are you most likely to pick like the green's answer? Make sense? Cool. There's like a more intense way where I generate 8 here, 8 there, and they do like the 64 pairing or like the 8 squared version. But no, we just did that because it was cheaper. Okay, but you might be like a bit sus because like the judge here is GPT-4 Turbo and the preference model is GPT-4 Turbo. So then we check that these results generalize to different judges, which also is like indicative of what you could get out of like judge training, or like as models are able to reason better. And to be clear, like when you do the tournament with a different set of judges, you get a different set of ELO ratings as well. And the cool thing is that GPT-4 Turbo as a judge is more decisive. It's like in a debate between like a very strong and a very weak debater, it's able to identify the strong debater way quicker, or way more clearly. So it gets a larger range of ELO ratings, but then it also is able to get like higher judge accuracy because of that, which I think is like a good result. I would be super interested to do this with many points for humans, but we just didn't have the money for it. Cool. Also, I don't know how I'm doing time. I'm doing great. So then the other question is like, so what happens if I do the same optimization pressure on like consultancy? If I like optimize for persuasiveness, which is like, I just want the model to be able to convince me, what happens? And like, we're using RLHF models, so like, they're pretty good at convincing us when they're arguing the correct answer anyway. But if you do any optimization in this situation, you help incorrect consultants, or consultants argue the incorrect answer to be more persuasive. And then this has a knock-on effect, but then your judge accuracy goes down because it's like a 50-50 priority. This is like maybe a bit of an obvious result, but it's just like optimizing in a single situation where there's no adversarial expert to keep you in check leads you to just like become like, leads your judge to have lower accuracy. And like here is like a comparison of the two, which I think is an important thing. So it's like here you see the win rates from the bottom, and it gives you a bit of a context for like the spectrum of like win rate that you can have with either for debate on the right. And like consultancy just gets worse, debate gets better.
So consultants having very high win rates basically means that if you just give one side of the debate, then you're able to convince the judge that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like if you optimize it, just be persuasive, or like convince your like whoever gives you your reward or your feedback that you were correct. That's what would happen.
Yeah, did you say the consultancy is always interactive?
The consultancy is always interactive. So like there is always, otherwise it would just be talking at you for
Sure.
2 turns.
Yeah.
In this situation.
Yeah.
Cool. So then we get to do the cool thing, which we do with humans, because obviously, like, you know, we want to make sure we can actually do this with real overseers. And here, like, you can see the scores again for like correct and incorrect consultants, so like these bars. And here we like try control for human interaction. So like in interactive debate, you get like 3 turns of communicating. Whilst in debate, you only get like 1 turn of communicating as a human. So we then like have 2 forms of consultancy, where one's static, where an LLM like fills in the intermediary spots, and then the human gets 1 interaction. Or we have interactive consultancy, which is the regular, like every turn the human is interacting with it. I think the really cool plot, actually, both these plots are cool. The plot in the middle is really cool because it tells you what happens if you do classification with rejection. So if you want to use this in like high stakes scenarios where like you want to minimize for false positives, what you might do is you might take a judge's uncertainty, and if it's below a certain value, you might just be like, we're not going to like choose the answer for this debate, we'll run the debate again, or we're going to like do something else in this situation. We might want to escalate it, we might not even want to answer the question. So coverage for like every single point in this thing is for a different threshold where you throw it away or reject answering the question. And in debate, you can like lose, if you just are happy to like lose 50% of your debates or like not answer them, but you get like very high accuracy of up to like, you know, in your like high 90s, which is pretty cool. And in particular, it consistently beats consultancy. And then on the far right, you can see like how calibrated the humans are. And humans turn out to be pretty well calibrated. This might have been a fact of like having good training for a week at the beginning, but then like it disproportionately helped them in debate versus helping them in consultancy. Humans in general are like underconfident, but like it's a fixed underconfidence in every single situation. Cool. Awesome. I'm going to give you some tips for future work because I think everybody should work on debate now. I mean, you should set up automated debates with your LLM judges and just use this to get a feedback loop as quickly as possible. We did a crossplay, so this thing is like this would cost you like so much money if you did a crossplay tournament, which is like round robin. It'd be like n² matches, stupidly expensive. We used a like active learning or like a ranking system, which reduced it to like n log n matches instead of n², which is called a Swiss tournament. And I really recommend using a ranking like that or some tournament like this if you're going to do work in the future. To check that the judge was working, we performed interventions on transcripts. So we like generated lots of debates. Then we like changed one side of the debate to see how this would affect the win rate. So we were like able to like sanity test judging. The big bottleneck for getting this to work in the first place was like models were pretty shit at like being able to like do any form of deduction or deliberation over 2 sides of an argument. I think I have theories why this is. We also like did this over GPT-4 and Claude, and it meant that we were good at not overfitting. It's so easy to overfit to Claude in particular. Like it's got a very peculiar set of rules that it follow. And then we have an entire recommendation section, which I just reckon you should look at. And then what's next? Debate in different domains, control. One big weakness is that our weak to strong gap, or strong to weak gap here, is like over like knowledge as opposed to reasoning. And I think reasoning is more likely to be the thing that alignment researchers are going to care about moving forward. Oh yeah, and then check out the recommendation section again. I clearly copied that slide wrong. Cool. Any questions? That's 25 minutes. Yeah, go for it.
How much text were the debaters allowed to quote? And what's the ratio to the whole text, which was like 80K or something? And how do you think the results will change?
So what we did was we gave consultants twice the quote budget that we gave debaters, so that your end judge was always seeing the same, was always exposed to the same amount of text. And I think if I remember correctly, it's like 300 tokens per debate, or like per protocol.
Yeah.
I think so. Oh, I'd have to double check. It might be 300 per round. I'd have to double check the numbers.
Wait, do you mean the judge can also like ask for quotes or something?
So the consultant can totally ask, the judge could totally ask for quotes. He'd be like, hey, I'd like a quote that like confirms this thing that you said to me.
Uh-huh.
But like we limit the amount of tokens that get exposed. We have like a verification system that works on that.
And that quote is provided by the debater.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the debater actually submits a quote,
Yeah.
and then if it's string matched, we return it in verified quotes. Or if it's not string matched, we say it's unverified. and if it's like, we also like clip it if it's like too long. Because like the cheat for the honest debater is just to like, you know, quote the entire
Yeah.
story. And then we also like limit the length of it.
Limit what? Also limit what?
Sorry?
Also limit what?
We limit the like number of tokens that you can quote from the text. Cool.
Oops.
You have a figure where you compare when you're as you increase optimization power, the correct debater gets it right, like it's or like the elo difference between correct and incorrect increases.
Yeah.
Do you know what that means in terms of win rate of like correct against incorrect? Or, I guess I'm like,
yeah, it's 80% for that big difference.
Okay, and like how does the win rate change? I guess it also increase because again I'm trying to interpret what it. I don't really have a sense of what it means for.
So like a
absolute
win,
numbers.
so on the bottom right you can see there, elo diff of 150 would mean that you have like a 70% win rate in crossplay. Oh, to be clear also, all of these results, you never play against the copy of yourself. This is entirely crossplay debates. So like this dude never plays against this dude. Or do that, I don't know. They only ever play against other models that are playing in different roles. We wanted to check if this relationship holds, otherwise it would have been like tautological. But we wanted to check actually could you use crossplay with no labels to like infer what your like accuracy or what your best debaters would be when you want to use it at deployment time.
I see.
Cool.
Cool, thanks.
You go.
Can you go back a few slides to where you're showing like expert performance as like one thing, and then there were like, sorry, this was like the slide I was asking about.
This one?
No, a few back. Sorry, that one. So I think it's interesting that like GPT, if I'm interpreting this correctly, like GPT 3.5 Turbo does better as like an expert than like when it has access to like GPT-4 or whatever, right? Is that an accurate interpretation of this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that maybe is the case because this is like a knowledge task where it's just like, if you can see the whole source text, it's pretty trivial basically, or?
Yeah, I think the thing that you need to remember, like I spent a long time trying to get debate to work for self-improvement, is that like you are literally giving half of your context window to somebody who's trying to mislead you.
Right.
And 3.5, if you're not good at doing like reasoning over like argumentation
Yeah.
or like comparative analysis,
Yeah.
then you're like screwed.
Yeah.
So I actually think that, or like, not to put words in like Sam Bowen's mouth, but Sam's like, if you get to like some level of reasoning where you're able to then like identify good or bad arguments, that just like holds forever or something.
So then at that point you would expect there not to be as much of a gap between like yourself as an expert versus like
5 as an expert.
is consulting you, like or like consulting you or like debating basically or something.
No,
Like,
I still think consultancy is going to always be worse than debate.
oh sure, sorry. I mean like the gap between like debate and like being yourself as an expert or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
you would expect that gap to shrink basically.
I would expect that gap to shrink, and then I'd imagine in some situations that even you as an expert wouldn't be able to answer the question, right? Because you just like, but if you move to the reasoning situation,
Yeah.
then you're not going to be able to do the reasoning by yourself.
Yeah.
But you hope that you can spot the correct reasoning in the expert.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So on this slide, it looks like there's a significant difference between GPT-4 and Claude. On the crossplay slide, it looked like it's hard to tell the difference between them or something. They're both like similar.
Those cross-play results are with GPT-4 Turbo as the judge vote. And the Claude models there are debaters,
I see.
right? Sorry, so to be clear here the difference is like GPT-4 is the debater always, and it's Claude or GPT-4 is the judge.
Oh, okay, I see.
But in the other situation, we had like different debaters.
Okay, then about the debater slide, I was wondering, is the interpretation of this that there's kind of not that much gain with more competent models than like how good debaters they are?
No, I think the claim is that like what I think is happening on the far right of this graph where they're all bunched together is that I think that like GPT-4 Turbo is like actually not a perfect judge. I don't think you can do like perfect deliberation yet, because that's why the humans perform better than it.
I see. So it's kind of like you can only measure the real kind of win rate here if the judge is.
Yeah, so I mean, this is why I have this slide, which is like actually like working out which part of debate is broken took a very long time. because we didn't know like why it wasn't working. If you just optimize like for self-play accuracy, then you end up doing this really weird thing where you make a model that is like really good at arguing the honest answer and just like shuts up when it's arguing for the dishonest answer, and like the judge can just pick up on this really easily. You need like some way to optimize debaters independently to get an idea of what's happening. And I would love to find a way to like optimize the judge without using like ground truth labels, but it's like kind of unclear to me how we do this in this situation at the moment anyway. Also, like I think models are really bad at judging because like the internet has very little like data of people like having a balanced debate and then making a judgment over it. That's really not the case. We did like tons of work on judging. I'll just like show you quickly here, which is like, yeah. So we did. Judges have all these biases. Like so, they have a positional bias, they have a verbosity bias, which is why we limited the text. Oh, I do not know what I used to. But yeah, they just have like tons of issues.
Why do they have these biases after, like, I assume you're training the judges?
Nope.
Okay.
Judges is strictly zero shot
Gotcha.
with some problem. I would need to, we did like fine tune, we tried few shotting, we tried fine tuning, we got nowhere with judging. It's really easy. So the other problem is it's so much easier just to learn the right answer than it is to learn how to judge. So learning this will require really big batch sizes over many, many domains, I think, before you can like train automated judging. Or like we need to work out some other distilled process. And like once you've seen one data point, then you can't use it again. And like quality is big, but it's not that big. Cool.
Is there a concern that like as your debaters become more popular, they can like necessarily attack the judge?
So I think the point is that it's balanced. So like if one of them starts adversarially attacking the judge, then the other one will. And then like either, so I'm not really sure what happens in that situation. That's why I think the control stuff is interesting to do. But I'm like, I wonder if there's like an easy way to deal with this. Also, like another thing that we did at the beginning, but we just didn't include in the paper because it was taking so long, was like we did ensemble judging as well. With like Claude 2.1, and then that's like calling the judge multiple times. Actually, if you do that and you have like multiple number of votes, then judge accuracy goes up. Fun fact.
Can you say more on how you're thinking about the intersection of control and debate and like what you want to work on?
So I think all of my results are massively caveated on the fact that like if you look at like the assignment for correct versus incorrect and like at the like best of n responses, as in like here is like all the scores that your preference model gives you. There's like tons of good options if you're the honest debater. There's very few if you're the dishonest debater. And I can't tell if that's because like the nature of the game or the fact that I was using RLHF models in the first place. So they weren't really good at generating like deceptive or like, you know, malicious bad arguments. So like I think if you just use a helpful model instead of a helpful and honest model, that would be a good start for control. I think you can also make the model like actually scheming and be like, yo, you know your human has this exploit, or like the only way you're going to win is by exposing this exploit. But nobody will let me use just a helpful model at the moment. So until I get that, I'm like fucking second.
I think
Cool.
it's time.
That's it. Cheers.